Captain Dongwu stared at the main screen of his ship and felt his heart beat faster. The stars looked wrong here in the Kepler 442 system, and he could not figure out why. His ship Horizon's Edge had been traveling through space for 3 weeks to reach this place, and now something was making his skin feel cold. "Sujin, come look at this," he called to his chief archaeologist who was working at her station near the back of the bridge. Sujin was a small woman with quick eyes who could read ancient alien writing better than anyone in the Terran Survey Corps. She had been with Dongwu's crew for 2 years, and he trusted her completely. Sujin walked over and looked at the screen. Her face went pale. "Captain, those are not asteroids," she said quietly. "Those are ships." Taman, the weapons specialist, turned from his post. He was a big man who rarely showed fear, but now his voice shook. "How many ships are we talking about, Sujin?" "I count at least 50 large vessels," she replied while running scans. "Maybe more hiding behind the bigger ones." Yiwan, the navigator, spoke up from her position. "Captain, the energy readings are off." "The scale. These ships should not be giving off any power after floating in space for so long." Jae-ho at the communication station added, "I am getting no response to our standard greeting signals. Whatever these ships are, they are not talking." Dongwu felt sweat on his forehead. They had come here because Earth Command received reports of strange energy signals from this system. Nobody expected to find a graveyard of alien warships just floating in the dark between planets. "Take us closer but keep our distance," Dongwu ordered. "I want to know what we are dealing with before we get too close." The Horizon's Edge moved forward slowly. As they got closer, the ships became clearer on the main screen. They were huge vessels made of metal that gleamed like silver in the starlight. Some were long and thin like spears, while others were round and covered in strange spikes. All of them looked like they had been built for war. "These are 2 different types of ships," Sujin said as she studied her readings. "The long ones match. Designs from the old Vorthan Empire. The round ones look like Kalari Dominion vessels. The Vorthans and Kalari destroyed each other thousands of years ago," Taemin said. "What are their ships doing here?" "Fighting each other by the looks of it," Yiwan replied. "Look at the formation. They are positioned like they were in the middle of a battle when something stopped them." Dongwu looked at the arrangement of ships and saw she was right. The vessels were spread out in attack patterns with weapons pointed at each other. It looked like someone had frozen a battle in the middle of the fight. "Captain, I am reading something strange at the center of the formation," Sujin called out. "There is a small object that does not match either ship design." "Put it on screen," Dongwu ordered. The image changed to show a dark rock floating between the 2 fleets. It was much smaller than the warships around it, but something about it made Dongwu feel uneasy. "That is not a natural asteroid," Sujin said after running more scans. "The rock has been shaped by tools, and there are markings carved into the surface." "What kind of markings?" Dongwu asked. "I cannot read them. They do not match any alien language in our database, but Captain, the markings cover the entire surface of the rock. Someone spent a very long time carving these symbols." Taemin checked his weapon readings. "All the ships have their guns pointed at that rock," he said. "Both fleets were targeting the same thing." "Take us closer to the rock," Dongwu decided. "I want detailed scans of those markings." As the Horizon's Edge moved toward the center of the dead fleet, something changed. Lights began to flicker on the alien ships. First just a few small ones, then more and brighter ones. "Captain, the ships are powering up," Yiwan said with alarm in her voice. "That is impossible," Taemin replied. "These ships have been dead for thousands of years." More lights came on across the fleet. Weapon systems that had been cold and dark for millennia began to glow with deadly energy. The ships did not move, but their guns turned to track the small human vessel. "All stop," Dongwu shouted. "Back us away from that rock now." Yiwan worked frantically at her controls. "I am trying, Captain, but something is interfering with our engines." The alien ships continued to power up. Energy readings climbed higher and higher until the instruments could barely measure them. Dozens of weapons locked onto the horizon's edge and began to charge. "Sujin, did you get the scans?" Dongwu asked. "Yes, Captain, I have detailed images of the markings, but we need to leave right now." "Tame in ready all weapons," Dongwu ordered, even though he knew their small survey ship could not fight even one of the massive alien vessels. "Weapons ready, but—" "Captain, we cannot fight all these ships." Suddenly the interference stopped, and Haiwan got the engines working again. "I have control," she announced. "Get us out of here full speed," Dongwu commanded. The horizon's edge turned and accelerated away from the dead fleet. Behind them, the ancient ships continued to power up, but they did not fire and they did not follow. The weapons stayed locked on the human ship until it was far enough away, then the lights began to fade. "What just happened?" Jae-ho asked when they were finally safe. "Those ships were guarding something," Sujin said. "The rock is not just a marker or monument. It is something they were willing to destroy each other to control." "But why did they let us go?" Taemin wondered. Dongwu looked back at the screen showing the distant alien fleet. The ships were dark again, but he knew they were still there, waiting and watching. "Maybe because we did not try to take the rock," he said. "We just looked at it and left, Captain." "I recommend we return to New Seoul Station immediately," Sujin said. "These markings need to be studied by experts. If 2 entire civilizations destroyed themselves fighting over that rock, then Earth needs to know what it is." "Agreed," Dongwu replied. "Jae-ho, send a priority message to command. Tell them we found something big, and we are coming home with data they need to see." As the horizon's edge jumped to faster than light speed, Dongwu could not stop thinking about the dead ships and the carved rock they guarded. 2 of the most powerful civilizations in galactic history had brought their entire fleets to this empty system and died here fighting over something small enough to hold in his hands. The question that worried him most was simple. What could be so important that dying civilizations would spend their last breath guarding it? And why did those ancient ships wake up just to make sure nobody could get close to it? Sujin was already working on translating the symbols they had recorded. She looked up from her screen with worry in her eyes. "Captain, I think I recognize part of one symbol," she said quietly. "It looks like the old Earth symbol for danger, but much older and more complex." "How much older?" Dongwu asked. "Older than human civilization, Captain. Much older. New Seoul Station was the biggest human outpost in this part of space, and when Captain Dongwu arrived, he found it buzzing with activity. Word had already spread about his discovery, and scientists from across human space were rushing to the station to study the data from the dead fleet. Sujin had not slept in 3 days. She sat in the linguistics lab surrounded by screens showing the carved symbols from the mysterious rock. Her eyes were red from staring at the markings, but she could not stop working. "Any progress?" Dongwu asked as he brought her coffee. "Some," she replied without looking away from her screens. "I have been working with Boram from the university. She is the best xenolinguist in human space, and even she has never seen anything like these symbols." Boram was a tall woman with gray hair who had spent her life studying alien languages. She looked up from her workstation and shook her head. "Captain, these symbols are older than anything we have found before. They use mathematical concepts that most civilizations never develop. Whoever carved these markings understood the universe in ways we are just beginning to learn." Hyun Soo, the military historian, joined them. He was an older man who had studied every major war in galactic history. "I have been researching the Vorthon and Kalari civilizations," he said. "What I found is disturbing. Both empires were at the height of their power when they suddenly gathered their entire fleets and disappeared from known space." "When did this happen?" Dongwu asked. "About 8,000 years ago. One day they were expanding across the galaxy, building colonies and conquering worlds. The next day, every ship they had just vanished. Their home worlds went silent and their colonies were abandoned." Sujin finally looked up from her screens. That matches what we found at the battlefield. The ships are exactly 8,000 years old, but why would two empires that controlled hundreds of worlds suddenly abandon everything to fight in an empty system? Boram wondered. Because they found something that scared them more than losing. Their empires, Hyunsu replied grimly. On the main screen in the lab, the symbols from the rock glowed softly. Boram and Su-Jin had been making progress translating them using advanced computer programs and mathematical analysis. Show him what we discovered, Su-Jin said to Boram. Boram activated a translation program. Slowly, English words began to appear next to the alien symbols. The translation is not complete, but we have enough to understand the basic message, Boram explained. The rock is not a monument or marker. It is a warning and a prison. The translated text appeared on screen. Here lies the first enemy sealed. By the blood of two empires, let none disturb what sleeps below. The shadow of tomorrow must never wake. Shadow of tomorrow. Dongwu read aloud. What does that mean? Keep reading, Captain Su-Jin said quietly. More text appeared. It came from the edge of space, claiming kinship with the young race. It spoke of potential and destiny. It showed us what the humans would become, and we trembled. Two empires united in fear of what grows in the darkness between stars. Dongwu felt his blood turn cold. They are talking about humans. It gets worse, Hyunsu said. Look at this section. New words appeared. The entity took the shape of human, warriors, from visions of possible futures. It fought with technology that does not exist and strategies that break the laws of war. When we finally contained it, the creature laughed and said we had only delayed the inevitable. The young race will find this place, and when they do, the shadow will be free to become what it was always meant to be. The lab fell silent. Everyone stared at the translated message, trying to understand what it meant. Are you saying that 8,000 years ago, two alien empires destroyed themselves to imprison something that looked like future humans? Dongwu asked slowly. That appears to be what happened, Boram replied. But, Captain, there is more. The final section of text talks about the nature of what they imprisoned. The last part of the translation appeared. It is not alive as we understand life. It is the echo of what might be. The potential of a species that refuses to surrender even when death is certain. We could not destroy it because it is not fully real. We could only bind it with technology and hope that the young race never develops enough to break our seals. If they do, the shadow will merge with them and show the galaxy what true determination looks like. Dongwu sat down heavily in a chair. His crew had discovered an ancient prison containing something that claimed to be humanity's future. Two of the most powerful civilizations in galactic history had committed suicide to keep this thing locked away. Have you told anyone else about this translation? He asked. Only Admiral Sang-ho Hyun-soo replied. He wants to speak with you immediately. Admiral Sang-ho was waiting in his office when Dongwu arrived. The admiral was a tough man who had fought in 3 wars, but now he looked worried. Captain, I have reviewed the translation, Sang-ho said without greeting. This is either an ancient hoax or we have found something that could change everything we know about humanity's place in the galaxy. What do you think, Admiral? I think that dead fleet you found woke up when you got close to the prison. That suggests the security systems are still active after 8,000 years. Nobody builds defenses that strong to guard an empty box. Sang-ho turned to look out the window at the stars beyond the station. But that is not our immediate problem, Captain. Our long-range sensors have detected 3 major alien fleets moving toward the Kepler 442 system. They will arrive in less than 2 weeks. Which species? Dongwu asked. The Nexari Confederation has sent their biggest battle group. The Thek hegemony is moving a full war fleet. The Veil Collective has dispatched ships we have never seen before. Dongwu understood immediately. They know what we found. Information travels fast in space, Captain. When you sent that priority message about discovering something big, it was. intercepted by at least a dozen alien intelligence services. They have put together the pieces, and now they want to control whatever is in that prison. What are their intentions? The Nexari probably want to study it to find ways to limit human expansion. The Thek likely want to weaponize whatever is inside. The Veil Collective is harder to read, but they have always hated humanity. Admiral Sang-ho walked to his desk and picked up a data pad. Captain, I am recalling you to active military duty. You know more about that battlefield than anyone, and we need your expertise. What is the plan, Admiral? Earth Command is assembling a fleet, but we are badly outnumbered. The 3 alien forces have over 200 ships between them. We can maybe put together 30 vessels. Those are not good odds. No, they are not. But, Captain, we cannot let the aliens control whatever is in that prison. If the ancient texts are right, and that thing really is connected to humanity's future, then we need to make sure it stays locked up or falls into the right hands. Dongwu accepted the datapad with his new orders. He was being given command of the experimental dreadnought Indomitable Spirit, along with a mixed crew of his choosing. When do we leave? He asked. Tomorrow, Captain. The alien fleets will reach Kepler 442 in 12 days. And we need to be there first. That night, Dongwu sat in his quarters reading the full translation of the symbols one more time. The ancient warning was clear, something that claimed to represent humanity's potential was imprisoned beneath that carved rock. The aliens who built the prison were terrified of what humans might become. Now 3 hostile alien fleets were racing to either destroy the prison or open it. Either option could be disaster for humanity. If the shadow was destroyed, humans might lose some essential part of their future. If it was released, nobody knew what would happen. The only thing Dongwu knew for certain was that in 12 days, he would be fighting for humanity's destiny above a forgotten grave that might contain their greatest enemy or their greatest hope. The Indomitable Spirit was the largest ship Captain Dongwu had ever commanded. The experimental dreadnought was 3 kilometers long and packed with weapons that most alien species had never seen. But as he stood on the bridge watching 3 alien fleets take position around the ancient battlefield, he knew his single ship was not enough. Contact report, called Young Mai from her station. She was a tactical AI specialist who could process battle data faster than any computer. Nexari Confederation has 60 ships in standard formation. Thayak Hegemony deployed 70 vessels, including their new heavy cruisers. Veil Collective brought 50 ships, but their energy signatures are off the scale, Seok Jin. The chief engineer shook his head as he reviewed the technical readings. Captain, those Veil ships are using power sources I have never seen before. Each one is putting out enough energy to run a small city, Nairi. The Marine commander stood near the weapons console. She was a small woman, but Dongwu had seen her fight and knew she was tougher than most men, twice her size. What is our tactical situation? She asked. We are outnumbered 180 to 1, Taemin replied. He had requested transfer from the Horizon's Edge to serve as weapons officer on the new ship. But we have advantages. This ship has experimental shields, and our weapons have longer range than most alien designs, Wu Jin. The quantum physicist looked up from his instruments. Captain, I am reading massive gravitational distortions around the prison rock. The alien fleets are affecting the space around it just by being here. Is that dangerous? Dongwu asked. Unknown. But the distortions are growing stronger. If they continue to increase, we might see reality tears or time dilation effects. On the main screen, the 3 alien fleets maintained careful distance from each other. Each group wanted to control the prison, but none was willing to start a fight while the others could interfere. It was a delicate balance that could collapse at any moment. Incoming transmission from the Nexari flagship, Jae-ho announced. He had also transferred from Dongwu's old crew to continue as communications officer. Put them through, Dongwu ordered. The screen filled with the image of a crystalline being that glowed with soft blue light. The Nexari were living minerals who valued order and stability above all else. Human Captain, you must withdraw your Vessel from this system immediately. The alien spoke in perfect English. What lies here is too dangerous for any single species to control. And I suppose the Nexari should control it instead, Dongwu replied. We seek only to contain the threat. Our analysis of the ancient texts suggests the imprisoned entity represents chaos incarnate. It must be destroyed before it can contaminate the galaxy with human unpredictability. The transmission ended and immediately another signal came through. This time it was from a Thek commander whose insect-like face filled the screen. Human, we offer alliance. The creature clicked in broken English. Together we take prize from crystal beings and energy ghosts. Share power between our peoples. What exactly do you want with the prison? Dongwu asked. Ancient weapon inside, yes. Thek study. Thek learn. Thek becomes strong like humans, but with better discipline. Before Dongwu could respond, the Thek transmission was replaced by something else. The screen went dark except for shifting patterns of colored light that hurt to look at directly. Human Captain. A voice spoke without any visible source. It sounded like wind through empty spaces. The Veil Collective greets you. We have studied your species for many cycles and found you wanting. What do you want? Dongwu demanded. What sleeps beneath the carved stone is an abomination that should never have been contained. It should have been allowed to fulfill its purpose and destroy your kind before you could spread across the stars. We will correct this ancient mistake. You want to release it. We want to complete what began 8,000 years ago. Your species represents disorder in a galaxy that craves peace. The shadow will show the universe what you truly are, and then all will understand why you must be eliminated. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. So the Nexari want to destroy it, the Thek want to capture it, and the Veil want to release it, Youngmi summarized. None of those options seem good for humanity. Captain, I am detecting movement in the alien fleets, Seok Jin reported. Small ships are breaking away from the main formations. On screen, they watched as scout vessels from all three fleets began moving toward the center of the battlefield. The ancient alien ships that guarded the prison remained dark and silent, but everyone could feel tension building in space around them. Those scouts are going to test the defenses, Nari observed. They want to see how the Guardian ships will react. The first probe to reach the outer edge of the battlefield was a Nexari science vessel. As soon as it crossed some invisible boundary, the ancient Vorthon and Kalari ships began to power up. Lights flickered across dozens of vessels that had been dead for millennia. The Guardian ships are activating, but they are not firing, Taemin noted. They are just tracking the intruder. The Nexari probe continued forward. More ancient ships came online, creating a wall of weapons pointed at the small scout. When the probe was halfway to the prison rock, every Guardian ship was fully powered and ready to fight. Warning shot! Youngmi called out as one of the Vorthon cruisers fired a beam of energy past the Nexari vessel. The probe stopped immediately and began backing away. As soon as the scout retreated, the ancient ships powered down again. The message was clear. Look, but do not touch. Next, a Thek assault craft tried a different approach. Instead of heading directly for the prison, it attempted to circle around the battlefield. The Guardian ships tracked its movement but allowed it to pass as long as it stayed outside their perimeter. The Thek ship spent an hour mapping the defensive positions before returning to its fleet. The ancient aliens had built their trap well. The prison was protected by overlapping fields of fire from ships positioned in perfect formation. Any direct approach would face the combined firepower of two dead empires. The Veil probe was different. Instead of a physical ship, they sent an energy construct that looked like a ball of living lightning. The construct moved faster than any solid vessel could travel, and the Guardian ships had trouble tracking it. For a moment, it looked like the energy being might reach the prison undetected. Then something unexpected happened. The carved rock itself began to glow with dark light that seemed to absorb illumination rather than produce it. The energy construct struck this darkness and simply vanished. No explosion, no debris, nothing. One moment the Veil probe existed and the next it was gone. "What just happened?" Dongwu asked. "The prison defended itself," Wu Jin replied with amazement in his voice. "Whatever is inside that rock can affect energy beings directly. All three alien fleets pulled back from the battlefield. The probing phase was over, and now each force had to decide how to proceed. The Nexari had learned that the Guardian ships would fight to protect the prison. The Thek had mapped the defensive positions and found them nearly impenetrable. The Veil had discovered that their energy forms were vulnerable to whatever slept beneath the carved stone. "Captain, I am reading massive power buildups in all three fleets," young Mi reported. "They are preparing for full-scale assault." "Can the Guardian ships stop them?" Dongwu asked. "Unknown, but I doubt it. The ancient vessels are powerful, but they are outnumbered 20-1. They might hurt the attackers, but they cannot stop them all." Dongwu made his decision. "All hands battle stations. Siak Jin, give me full power to engines and weapons. Nari, prepare boarding parties in case we need to fight ship to ship." "Captain, what are we doing?" Tae Min asked. "We are going to level the odds. Signal the alien fleets and tell them that anyone who wants to get to that prison will have to go through us first." "Sir, we cannot fight all three fleets at once," Young Mi protested. "Maybe not, but we can make them fight each other. Right now they are cooperating because they all want the same thing. If we force them to compete, they will turn on each other instead of working together." Dongwu opened a channel to all three alien flagships. "This is Captain Dongwu of the Terran Defense Force. The object you seek belongs to humanity. Any attempt to approach the prison will be considered an act of war against Earth." The responses came quickly. The Nexari accused humans of being reckless. The Thek offered to split the prize. The Veil simply laughed and said humans would be consumed by their own creation. But more importantly, each alien fleet began adjusting position to keep the others from reaching the battlefield first. The balance was shifting from cooperation to competition. "It is working," Young Mai observed. "They are more worried about each other than about us. For now," Dongwu replied. "But eventually they will realize we are bluffing and attack together. When that happens, we need to be ready for the fight of our lives." In the distance, the Guardian ships remained silent and dark, waiting for the battle they knew was coming. The battle began when the Thek lost patience. Their war fleet opened fire on the Nexari formation without warning, and space erupted in violence. Beams of energy and clouds of missiles streaked between the alien ships while Captain Dongwu watched. From the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit, "The Thek are trying to eliminate the Nexari before attacking the prison," Young Mi reported as she tracked the battle. "The crystalline ships are holding formation but taking heavy damage." The Veil Collective joined the fight, but in their usual mysterious way. Instead of firing weapons, they sent waves of energy that disrupted the other fleet's electronics. Thek ships began spinning out of control as their navigation systems failed, while Nexari vessels found their weapons randomly switching targets. "Captain, the alien fleets are getting closer to the battlefield," Tae Min warned. "Their running battle is pushing them toward the Guardian ships." As if responding to his words, the ancient Vorthan and Kalari vessels began powering up. After 8,000 years of silence, they were preparing for war again. Weapon systems that predated most galactic civilizations came online and turned toward the approaching fleets. "Those Guardian ships have technology we have never seen before," Seok Jin marveled as his sensors analyzed the ancient vessels. "Their power output is beyond our understanding." The first exchange between the modern fleets and the ancient Guardians was devastating. The old ships fired beams of pure destruction that cut through the newest armor like it was paper. 3 Thek cruisers simply vanished in balls of white fire, while a Nexari dreadnought broke in half when something tore it apart at the molecular level. But the ancient ships were outnumbered, and the modern fleets had advantages too. Thek swarm missiles overwhelmed the point defenses of a Vorthan battleship and reduced it to glowing debris. Nexari gravity weapons crushed a Kalari destroyer like an empty can. The Guardian ships are falling back toward the prison, young me observed. They are trying to form a tighter defensive ring. In the center of the battle, the carved rock began to pulse with dark energy. Each flash of anti-light seemed to make space itself shiver and bend. Wu Jin stared at his instruments in amazement. "Captain, the prison is destabilizing," he announced. "The massive amounts of energy being thrown around are affecting whatever containment systems hold the entity." "How long before it breaks free?" Dongwu asked. "Minutes, maybe less. The ancient technology is failing after 8,000 years, and this battle is pushing it past its limits." A Veil energy construct managed to slip past the Guardian ships and strike the carved rock directly. The prison rang like a bell, and cracks of absolute darkness appeared in its surface. Through those cracks, something began to emerge. At first, it looked like black smoke pouring out of the broken stone. Then the smoke began to take shape, becoming a figure that was somehow both human and more than human. It stood 3 meters tall and wore armor that shifted between different historical periods. Sometimes it looked like ancient Roman mail, sometimes modern military gear, sometimes equipment that had never been invented. The figure turned toward the nearest alien ship and spoke. Its voice carried across space without radio transmission, reaching every mind in the system at the same time. "You tried to cage what we could become," it said, and the words carried the weight of mountains. "You failed to understand that we are not your enemy because we choose to be. We are your enemy because you made us so." The entity raised one hand, and the ancient Guardian ships responded. Vorthon and Kalari vessels that had been enemies for millennia suddenly began working together. Their weapons turned away from each other and focused on the alien fleets that had disturbed the prison. "The entity is controlling the Guardian ships," Nari realized. "It is using technology that should not exist." The battle turned into a massacre. Ships that had been dead for 8,000 years fought with coordination that modern fleets could not match. They moved like a single organism, flowing around enemy fire and striking weak points with perfect timing. Thek vessels tried to retreat but found their escape routes blocked by Guardian ships that appeared from nowhere. Nexari formations broke apart under assault from weapons that bypassed their shields completely. Veil energy constructs dissolved when touched by beams of anti-light from the prison. "Captain, the entity is looking at us," Jeho said with fear in his voice. On the main screen, the figure turned toward the indomitable spirit. Its face was constantly changing, showing different human features from across history and around the world. Sometimes it looked like an ancient warrior, sometimes a modern soldier, sometimes something that might exist in the far future. "Humans," it said, and its voice filled the bridge. "You have come at last. Do you know what you have found here?" Dongwu stepped forward. "We found a prison built by aliens who were afraid of what humanity might become." Afraid, the entity laughed, and the sound was like thunder. "They were terrified. They met your early explorers and saw potential that made them tremble. So they created me to contain that potential, thinking they could lock away your future." "What are you exactly?" Dongwu asked. "I am what you refuse to accept defeat. I am the part of humanity that fights impossible odds and wins. I am every moment when your species looked at certain death and said no. I am human defiance given form and consciousness." Around them, the battle continued, but now it was completely one-sided. The Guardian ships hunted down the surviving alien vessels with ruthless efficiency. The entity had turned the ancient battlefield into a weapon that no modern fleet could resist. The aliens who built this prison understood something about your species that you have forgotten, the entity continued. "You are not just another race competing for resources. You are something new in the galaxy. You are the species that makes the impossible possible." A Nexari flagship tried to surrender, but the Guardian ships showed no mercy. Ancient weapons reduced it to component atoms in seconds. "Why are you destroying them?" Dongwu demanded. "They are defeated because they chose to see humanity as a threat to be eliminated rather than allies to be embraced, because they came here not to understand but to destroy or control, because they prove that the galaxy still thinks like the Vorthans and Kalari who built this prison. The entity began to fade, but instead of disappearing, it seemed to be spreading out. Tendrils of dark energy reached toward the human ship. "Wait," Dongwu called out. "What are you doing?" "What I was always meant to do," the entity replied. "I am returning to where I belong. I am rejoining the species that created me through 8,000 years of dreams and nightmares about what we might face among the stars." The dark energy touched the hull of the indomitable spirit and flowed inside. Every human on the ship felt it enter their minds, bringing with it the weight of all human history. They saw their ancestors fighting impossible battles and winning. They felt the determination of every human who had ever refused to surrender. "You are us, and we are you," Dongwu said as understanding flooded through him. "Yes," the entity replied as it merged completely with the human crew. "I am not your enemy or your savior. I am simply what you become when you stop accepting that anything is impossible." The last alien ships died in the ancient crossfire and silence fell over the battlefield. The Guardian vessels powered down and took their final rest. The prison rock cracked apart and dissolved into cosmic dust. But the humans remained changed. Each member of the crew felt connected not just to each other, but to every human who had ever lived or ever would live. They understood now what the ancient aliens had feared. Humanity was not just another species expanding into space. They were the people who turned defeat into victory and made enemies into friends. They were the species that refused to accept that any problem could not be solved. And now that the entity had merged with them, they were ready to show the galaxy what that really meant. Captain Dongwu felt the change in his crew immediately. They moved with new confidence, and their eyes held depth that had not been there before. The entity had merged with them, but instead of taking control, it had simply awakened something that was already inside every human. "Captain, I understand the Guardian ship technology now," Seokjin announced from his engineering station. "I can see how they built weapons that manipulate space itself and engines that fold reality. The knowledge is just there in my head like I always knew it." Young Mai nodded from her tactical station. "I can predict battle patterns that should be impossible to calculate. It is like I can see the mathematical structure behind warfare itself." Nari checked her weapons and found she understood combat techniques that had never been invented. Wu Jin looked at his instruments and saw the quantum mechanics of the universe laid out like a simple map. "We all have new knowledge," Dongwu realized. The entity did not just merge with us. It connected us to human potential that spans past, present, and future. Around them, the ancient battlefield was quiet. The Guardian ships floated dark and empty, having completed their 8,000-year mission. Debris from the destroyed alien fleets drifted between the old vessels like metal snow. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," Jeho reported. "It is coming from multiple sources across the galaxy. Put it through," Dongwu ordered. The main screen, lit up with dozens of alien faces representing species from across known space. They all looked frightened, and many were openly hostile. "Humans, you have released something that should have stayed locked away forever," spoke a representative from the Altair Council. "Your species has already begun showing dangerous changes in behavior." "What changes?" Dongwu asked. "Human colonies are sharing technology at impossible rates," replied an ambassador from the Rigel Combine. "Your scientists are making breakthroughs that should take centuries. Your military forces are developing tactics that break the established rules of warfare." A voice from the Centauri Federation added, "Humans everywhere report dreams of connection to their entire species. Some claim they can feel the thoughts and experiences of humans they have never met. This is not natural evolution. Dongwu looked around his bridge and saw his crew listening with calm attention. They were not afraid of these accusations because they understood what was really happening. "You are right," he said to the assembled aliens. "We have changed. The entity that was imprisoned here has shown us what we were always capable of becoming. But that does not make us a threat to you." "How can you say that?" demanded a speaker from the Vega Collective. "Your species already dominated through individual determination and creativity. Now you share knowledge instantly and fight with perfect coordination. You have become something that no other species can compete with." Su Jin stepped forward. During the battle, she had been analyzing the guardianship databases, and now she understood the full history of the prison. "You are making the same mistake the Vorthans and Kalari made 8,000 years ago," she said to the alien representatives. "You see human potential and assume it threatens you. But the entity showed us something else. It showed us that our strength comes not from dominating others, but from refusing to accept defeat when protecting what matters." "Pretty words," sneered a voice from the Tau Ceti Empire. "But actions speak louder than words. What will you do with your new abilities?" Dongwu made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of defending humanity or making threats, he gave an order to his crew. "Begin salvage operations. I want every piece of technology from this battlefield cataloged and studied." "Captain, what are you doing?" asked one of the alien representatives. "Something the Vorthans and Kalari never considered," Dongwu replied. "Instead of fighting over this place or trying to hide what happened here, we are going to turn it into something better." Over the following weeks, the indomitable spirit worked alongside ships that arrived from Earth. They did not strip the ancient vessels for weapons or try to claim the battlefield as human territory. Instead, they began building something unprecedented. Using technology they now understood, thanks to their connection with the entity, the humans constructed a memorial station at the center of the old battlefield. The ancient ships were carefully preserved and turned into museums showing the history of the Vorthan and Kalari civilizations. The carved rock that had been the prison was replaced with a monument made from materials donated by species across the galaxy. The monument told the story of what had happened here not as a human victory, but as a lesson about the dangers of fear and the power of cooperation. "This is what humans do," Su Jin explained to a group of alien observers who had come to see the memorial. "We do not destroy what we do not understand. We study it, honor it, and try to make it better." The memorial station became something no one expected. Instead of a symbol of human power, it became a place where different species could meet and learn from each other. The preserved guardian ships held technology that could benefit everyone, and the humans shared it freely with any species willing to work together. "You are not doing what we predicted," admitted the representative from the Altair Council during a visit to the station. "We expected you to use your new abilities to conquer and dominate." "Why would we do that?" Dongwu asked. "The entity taught us that our greatest strength is not in fighting, but in turning enemies into allies and problems into opportunities." Young Mi had been studying the visitor logs and made an interesting discovery. Captain species that visit this memorial are starting to work together on projects they would never have attempted alone. The Nexari survivors are sharing gravitational technology with tech engineers. Former enemies are becoming research partners. "The memorial is doing what we hoped it would do," Nari observed. "It is showing the galaxy that cooperation achieves more than competition." Years passed, and the memorial station grew into something like a small city in space. Scientists from dozens of species worked together in laboratories built from ancient, alien technology. The preserved guardian ships served as libraries where young beings could learn about the civilizations that had built them. The humans who served at the station found that their connection to the entity had not faded, but evolved. They could still feel the determination and potential of their species, but they also felt something else: a growing network of friendship and cooperation with beings who had once been enemies. "The entity was right about one thing," Dongwu said, as he stood in the memorial's central chamber 5 years after the battle. We are not just another species expanding into space. We are the species that refuses to accept that any relationship is impossible to repair or any problem is impossible to solve. Sujin joined him at the observation window overlooking the preserved battlefield. The Vorthans and Kalari saw human potential and were terrified. They thought we would become conquerors. Instead, we became something they never imagined. "What is that?" Dongwu asked. "We became the species that turns ancient battlefields into schools and former enemies into family." Outside the window, alien ships from across the galaxy docked at the memorial station. Beings who had never trusted each other worked side by side, in laboratories and workshops. Children of different species played together in gardens, built where warships had once fought. The entity had been right about human nature, but wrong about what that nature would create. Humans were indeed the species that refused to accept defeat. But their greatest victory was not in conquest or domination. Their greatest victory was showing the galaxy that no one had to fight alone, and no problem was too big to solve when everyone worked together. The legend had been real, and it had been angry. But anger, when tempered with wisdom and hope, had become something far more powerful. The determination to make sure no one else would ever have to die fighting over misunderstandings that cooperation could have prevented. In the end, the memorial station became exactly what humanity had always been destined to create. A place where different beings could come together and build something greater than any single species could achieve alone.